From Chicago studios, this is the Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum, I'm Samana Siddiqui. First, the headlines. Facebook allowed anti-Muslim hate in India because of political considerations. French police cause misery for migrants, Human Rights Watch. South Africa's moral compass, Desmond Tutu, feted on his 90th birthday. Kashmiri fighters kill 2, accusing them of collaborating with India and RSS. U.S. gasoline prices soared to their highest level in 7 years. Germany puts 100-year-old on trial for Nazi crimes. Our top story tonight: Facebook allowed anti-Muslim content in India because of political considerations. That is according to Facebook whistleblower Frances Haugen. She cited internal documents referring to fear-mongering content promoted by RSS-linked users, groups, and pages. RSS is an Indian right-wing Hindu nationalist and paramilitary organization. It has been linked to human rights violations against the country's Muslims, Dalits, and Christians. RSS is linked to the ruling Bharatiya Janata Party, which is currently in power in India. Quoting a company document, Haugen says there were a number of dehumanizing posts comparing Muslims to pigs and dogs, and misinformation claiming the Quran calls for men to rape their female family members. Haugen's lawyers also cited internal company documents to show that India is classified as a Tier 0 country. This means that Facebook will pay more attention to the country during important election cycles. Apart from India, only the US and Brazil are classified in this category. Human Rights Watch reports that French police are inflicting misery on migrants in the northern port of Calais. The watchdog group says police are tearing down migrants' tents and forcing them to wander the streets as part of a deterrence policy. The report documents methods used by authorities to prevent the emergence of another major migrant settlement in Calais. This is 5 years after the demolition of the sprawling jungle camp, which housed up to 10,000 people at its peak. The report says the authorities carry out these abusive practices with the primary purposes of forcing people to move elsewhere without resolving their migration status or lack of housing. Faced with growing anti-migrant sentiment, President Emmanuel Macron's government is waging a campaign to deter new camps. A joint investigation by leading media organizations has revealed that refugees face violent pushback from clandestine security forces at the European Union's borders. Desmond Tutu, South Africa's anti-apartheid icon, Nobel Peace Laureate, and a man dubbed the moral compass of the nation, marked his 90th birthday on Thursday with a rare public appearance. Tutu attended a special Thanksgiving service at St. George's Cathedral in Cape Town, where he was appointed South Africa's first black Anglican archbishop. Tributes and well wishes for Tutu poured in from presidents, individuals, and organizations from around the world. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa lauded Tutu as a fighter in the cause for human rights, for equality, and for social justice in the 59 years since his ordination. Tutu has continued to raise his voice for justice around the globe. He was the only world leader warning of genocide in the Central African Republic, where almost all mosques were destroyed 6 years ago. And in 2014, Tutu was the first high-profile voice to say Israel is guilty of apartheid in its treatment of Palestinians. As Iraq heads to the polls on October 10th, a spotlight has fallen on the outsized influence neighboring Iran wields, as well as a growing backlash against it. The parliamentary vote is being held early as a concession to a pro-democracy movement. It rails against an Iraqi political system it describes as inept, corrupt, and beholden to Iran. At the height of unprecedented protests in November 2019, furious demonstrators attacked and torched Iran's consulate in the southern city of Najaf, shouting, "Get out of Iraq." Pro-Iranian Shia militia have been integrated into Iraq's state security apparatus. As well, in Iraq's parliament, political parties with deep ties to Iran have formed powerful blocs with major influence in past governments. Iran has also become one of Iraq's largest trading partners, providing a major boost to the country that has been battered by sanctions over its disputed nuclear program. But many Iraqis worry that Iranian influence is now too strong. Police in Indian-administered Kashmir say anti-India fighters shot dead 2 teachers, taking to 7 the number of people killed in the region in less than a week. Gunmen barged into a government-run school in the Eidgah area of the main city of Srinagar, killing the pair, including the principal, on the spot. No students were present at the time. The incident came 2 days after anti-India fighters from a relatively new rebel group, the Resistance Front, killed 3 civilians in street shootings. A statement attributed to the group accused the slain men of collaborating with Indian security forces. Anger has been simmering in the Muslim-majority area since August 2019. That was when the Indian government scrapped the region's semi-autonomy and allowed all Indians to buy land in Kashmir. This is seen as an attempt to change the demographics of the area, paving the way for a Hindu takeover of the region by the Hindu nationalist government. The Minnesota chapter of the Council on American Islamic Relations, or CAIR, is calling on law enforcement to consider a bias motive in an averted attack on a Muslim cemetery. Community members found over 30 tires placed inside a building at Al-Maghfirah Cemetery in Castle Rock Township. They also say a large gas pipe was cut inside the facility, possibly seeking an explosion and subsequent fire. CAIR Minnesota Executive Director Jailani Hossain said these were thankfully averted in what appears to be the latest hate attack on the Muslim community. The cemetery was previously vandalized in August 2017. The Organization of Islamic Cooperation, or OIC, is encouraging greater collaboration among its members. It is asking them to promote highlights of their markets and increase intra-OIC capital flow. At the 15th meeting of the OIC Exchanges Forum hosted online Tuesday by Borsa Istanbul, Korkmaz Ergun, its CEO and member of the board, said, "We strive to set an example to the Ummah all over the world with our bilateral and multilateral cooperation approach to our business." The forum was attended by 100 delegates from 23 OIC countries. U.S. gasoline prices have soared to their highest level in 7 years. The national average stood at $3.22 per gallon for regular gasoline, its highest since October 2014. That marked an increase of over 47% from a year ago, when it was $2.18 a gallon. The Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, or OPEC, and its allies agreed Monday to not pump more oil, despite rising demand. At least 20 people were killed and more than 100 injured on Thursday when an earthquake struck southwestern Pakistan. The 5.9 magnitude quake jolted at least 6 cities and towns in Balochistan province, causing roofs and walls of mud brick homes to collapse on families as they slept. The worst affected area was the remote mountainous district of Harnai, where landslides blocked some roads, hampering rescue efforts. Prime Minister Imran Khan said he had ordered immediate assistance on an emergency basis to the affected region. A 100-year-old former concentration camp guard became the oldest person yet to be tried for Nazi-era crimes in Germany as he went before the court on Thursday. He is being charged with complicity in mass murder. Joseph Schwetz stands accused of knowingly and willingly assisting in the murder of over 3,000 prisoners at Sachsenhausen camp north of Berlin between 1942 and 1945. More than 7 decades after World War II, German prosecutors are racing to bring the last surviving Nazi perpetrators to justice. Novelist Abdurrazak Gurna has won the 2021 Nobel Prize in Literature. The Tanzanian novelist, who arrived in the UK as a refugee, was awarded the prize for his uncompromising and compassionate penetration of the effects of colonialism and the fate of the refugee in the gulf between cultures and continents, the Nobel Prize Committee said. Gurna has published 10 novels and several short stories. The theme of the refugees' plight and disruption runs throughout his work. He is best known for his 1994 novel Paradise, set in colonial East Africa during the First World War, which was shortlisted for the Booker Prize for fiction. Afghanistan's health system is at the breaking point. Mohammad Siddiqui is head of the pediatric department at Midway's Hospital in Kandahar. He says there had been an influx of patients as access to the hospital improved following the end of Afghanistan's 20-year war last month. There are twice as many patients as beds. The hospital needs double the equipment, medicine, and staff. Many employees have quit after not being paid for months, while others have fled the country. Here's Dr. Noor Ali Nazarzai.
This time, 3 months as don't take the salary, and everyone needs doctors, nurse, HR, etc. So worker, everyone needs salaries, but we don't have 3 months salaries.
Meanwhile, the country is mired in poverty, with food prices soaring. Canada will accept double the number of Afghan refugees than previously planned, the Canadian Foreign Minister said on Monday. Canadian humanitarian groups have been urging the government to do more when it initially committed to take in 20,000 refugees last month. This was after the Taliban came to power in Afghanistan. Canada will now accept up to 40,000 Afghan refugees. That fulfills a campaign pledge made by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. The announcement came a week after Trudeau's party won re-election. Coming up next after the break is our in-depth analysis segment, so stay tuned and we'll be right back after these messages.
If I could be you, and you could be me for just 1 hour. If we could find a way to get inside each other's minds. Walk a mile in my shoes. Walk a mile in my shoes. Well, before you abuse, criticize, and accuse. Walk a mile in my shoes.
There are 16 million children struggling with hunger in America. That's 1 in 5 daughters, sons, neighbors, and classmates who don't know where their next meal is coming from. Yet billions of pounds of good food go to waste every year. It's time we do something about it. Feeding America is a nationwide network of food banks that helps provide meals to millions of kids and families in need. Visit feedingamerica.org to help them feed even more. Together, we can solve hunger. Together, we're feeding America.
Despite the development of a COVID-19 vaccine, millions around the world will not have access. We need a vaccine that's free and available to everyone, everywhere. It's time for a people's vaccine.
Our fellow Americans.
Right now, the COVID-19 vaccines are available to millions of Americans.
And soon, they will be available to everyone.
The science is clear. These vaccines will protect you and those you love from this dangerous and deadly disease.
They could save your life.
So we urge you to get vaccinated when it's available to you.
That's the first step to ending the pandemic and moving our country forward. It's up to you.
They took over my bedroom. Come on, come on. Okay, Dad. 1, 2, 3. Dad! You saved me. Dad?
Are you okay?
I'm fine, dear.
Your hero needs you now, and AARP is here to help. Find the care guides you need at aarp.org/caregiving.
Welcome back. To discuss the vaccine mandate for healthcare workers in New York and nationwide vaccination update, let's go to Imam Abdul Malik Mujahid. Over to you, Imam Mujahid.
Thank you, Samana. President Biden is in town in Chicago to talk about further mandates when it comes to COVID vaccine. Are these mandates working? What is the future? How long will we keep struggling with the COVID-19? We have someone who was in the beginning of our daily news broadcast, Dr. Uzma Syed. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Dr. Uzma Syed is infectious disease physician, COVID-19 expert, and chair of COVID task force in our hospital in New York. So is the vaccine mandate working?
That's a great question. So, we are very much aware of how much virus there is prevalent in our communities, in our country, and globally. And although we had a very good, efficient start to our vaccinations initially, we hit a roadblock. We had many struggles with vaccine hesitancy and deliberation, and we sought to really provide a lot of vaccine education and really debunk some of those myths that were out there. And with many different, a multi-tiered prong approach, we were able to really improve the vaccinations throughout the country. And we saw immediately the decline in cases in our country last late spring, early summer. Unfortunately, with Delta variant being prevalent globally, we saw that, the virus continued to spread in people that were not vaccinated. And, this really puts patients at risk in hospitals and healthcare systems, and it puts the community at risk at large. So with these vaccine mandates, what's happening is we're able to really drive the levels of the virus down in our communities. That's really the end goal, and protect the people who are most vulnerable. And with a global pandemic of this scale, we really have to reach the last few people who are in the wait and see period, who are in the vaccine resistant category, to really promote health and safety and well-being of everyone around us.
So has the vaccine mandate worked in your hospital in New York?
So since the announcement was made about the vaccine mandates in New York State, and we saw that healthcare workers were slowly starting to accept more and more vaccines. First, we saw this after the FDA had given full approval to the vaccines. And then as more and more education happened on the vaccine front and these mandates went into effect, more and more healthcare workers were accepting of the vaccine. And as we came close to that deadline of September 27th, we saw, a drastic jump in vaccinations, going up from 84 or so percentage up to 92% even. Of course, there are still many healthcare workers who chose not to get vaccinated and unfortunately have walked away from their careers at this point. But we have been able to vaccinate a good amount of healthcare workers, and this really enables us to protect our patients first and foremost.
Since you're in this field, Dr. Syed, are people personally approaching you to seek your advice whether they should take it or not take it? What are their fears which they convey to you?
Absolutely. So I really shifted my efforts onto vaccine education very early on when in December, the vaccines were first given emergency use authorization. I saw firsthand how much vaccine hesitancy there was, even in the healthcare industry, despite being on the front lines and healthcare workers seeing the significant impact from COVID-19. It was just human nature that these were something new, and people had legitimate fears. It was just about putting that same effort that was put into vaccine development, translating that into vaccine education to build that trust, to really have people have transparency and access to all this information that's out there. So people do often come up to me. I provide a lot of resources online with town halls, on a regular basis, webinars, any type of community outreach that I can do. I'm a core member for the Fates for Vaccines initiative. So we really provide tools for leaders in the faith industry and healthcare industry and everywhere to really have access to accurate information so that they can share with the community. So many of the fears that people have, unfortunately, are spreading by the misinformation that's been shared rampantly from the beginning of the vaccine rollout. And that misinformation continues to spread. And it's very unfortunate. So really, we have to undo a lot of this false information that's spreading and really build that trust in vaccine. At this point, we have millions of people who have been vaccinated in our country, and these vaccines have been proven to be safe and effective. And there is a process, there's checks and balances in place that have been followed to have these vaccines approved. And there is complete transparency in the process. So people can access all that information. So what I usually do is I have frank, candid conversations with people. I listen to them. I ask them about their fears, and I acknowledge their fears, and I walk them through a conversation, giving them the facts and also acknowledging their fears and helping them understand how this vaccine is going to be beneficial for them, for their families, for their loved ones, and for their community at large.
Now, some people are asking for religious exemption. What is this religious exemption to the COVID vaccine?
So at this point, the religious exemptions, for healthcare workers, especially in New York, is not something that is available at this time. And if you look at, religions across the world, we've got leaders, we've got the Pope, who is really encouraging people to get vaccinated. I think, across all faiths, there is so much emphasis on the preservation of life and protecting oneself and maintaining your health and protecting the community at large. In Islam, we say to save one life is as if you're saving all of mankind. So, there is so much emphasis on that. And for that reason, it's really up to faith leaders. And they have been doing a great job in this, in really relaying that information to their congregants about how important it is to protect yourself and your loved ones by vaccinating.
Now, Pfizer has just asked the FDA to authorize vaccine for children 5 to 11. Do you think now that a larger adult population is vaccinated, this effort is going to be successful, or there will be another second type of fight because people are still demonstrating on the streets on the mandates? So do you see similar continued problems when it comes to children?
Absolutely. I think, there are going to be struggles. I think we have learned a lot throughout this process. And it's really about community engagement and having candid conversations with people. I think this news about Pfizer submitting to the FDA is really welcome news, especially as our pediatric cases continue to climb. And we are seeing record hospitalizations in the pediatric population, and schools are open. So we want to make sure that the children who are most vulnerable at this point because they're not vaccinated are protected. So the data is really reassuring, showing safety and efficacy of these vaccines in the pediatric population. And it's really welcome news to have the FDA review this data on October 26th at their meeting. But I do foresee that there will be challenges in getting parents on board to vaccinating their children. Mm-hmm. And I think it's going to have to be the same multi-pronged approach of communication, having trusted messengers to really reach parents, healthcare workers, pediatricians who have rapport with their parents, and really just like any other childhood vaccination, just really emphasizing the importance of health. And, we know children, unfortunately, are suffering from COVID-19, whether it be hospitalization and serious consequence. We've had over 100 children, unfortunately, 125 children, I believe, have succumbed to COVID-19, and the hospitalizations continue to climb. And I think it's really important that pediatricians and healthcare workers do have that conversation with parents so that they understand the importance of this, not just short term, but long term, as far as long COVID and the debilitating consequences that children are dealing with that impacts their life, their immediate day-to-day activities.
There are many labs in America as well as across the world, including the Wuhan lab. There's a whole lot of controversy about these things, but one question which recently, actually, I think today in New York Times, somebody is asking, as an op-ed, is why in the world we need to continue to do research in making viruses potent enough to kill millions of people. I mean, this is an ethical question being raised after, more than a year and a half of a struggle with this particular virus. So are people who are in this field, like you are in COVID-19 experts and other people in these disciplines, are they also raising questions about the morality of this type of research, looking in engineering viruses which can kill potentially millions of people?
So that's a great question. And I think it goes back to, why is it important to know the origins? There's multiple layers in that question. So one is, why is it important to know the origins of the virus and the pandemic? The answer of which we don't have still, and unfortunately we may never have. And then, why are these practices in place? So we've seen previously with previous coronavirus outbreaks and epidemics and pandemics, we had SARS, we had MERS, and, now we have COVID-19, that these, can be detrimental. There were 8,000 people that died from SARS, obviously nothing close to what is happening with COVID-19 because of, the significance, the virulence, and the transmissibility of this virus. But this will not be the last pandemic. And I think it's really important that we learn from this and that we are one step ahead of it. And I think that's the whole basis for scientific discovery and scientific investigation. I think the thing that really has to be looked at, that we have learned from this and that we need to address moving forward, is really the safety of these labs, to ensure that, they're not all labs are created equal. So we have to make sure that there are those checks and balances in place, that they are really following strict protocol and making sure that there's safety measures in place to prevent any type of incidents from happening.
Well, Dr. Syed, tell us, when will it be over?
Well, now that's the $1 million question now, isn't it? Unfortunately, only time will tell. We can
consider it's a $1 billion question now.
$1 billion question, absolutely, absolutely.
So right now, I mean, it was going up, we reached the 2,000 per day, but it is declining. Death rate, infection is declining. Do you think it is going to come back within 2-3 months as the winter sets in?
So, we've seen this traditionally, characteristically with this pandemic. There's ebbs and flows. You have peaks and then you have valleys. And prior to vaccinations, it was a different story. We saw significant surge and an impact last winter. With the vaccinations, you can see certain states that have been doing really well with their vaccinations, how they were able to keep those levels somewhat under control with other mitigation practices as well, such as mask wearing, social distancing, things of that nature. So at this point, our cases have sort of plateaued, and we are seeing a decline in hospitalization just over the past month, which is really, again, welcome news. But we are moving into a cooler season as we head into fall and winter time. And again, schools are open and we have other respiratory viruses that are circulating. And we know that we have in many places lifted all the mask mandates. So, we are going to see probably increase in cases. I don't necessarily expect it to be at the same intensity and volume of last winter as we keep ramping up our vaccinations, especially with these mandates for businesses and public sector and moving into private sector and healthcare industry and schools. We are reaching that goal of continuing to vaccinate more and more people. So hopefully the vaccines will prevent this from being really astronomical levels of cases, really what we saw last year and overwhelming mortality that we saw last year and the impact on the healthcare system and the communities.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Usman Syed, for your time.
Most welcome.
Back to you, Samana.
Thank you, Imam Mujahid. That's all from our Chicago studios tonight. Thank you for tuning in. You can find previous episodes and more on our YouTube or Facebook. For more content, keep watching Muslim Network TV or visit muslimnetwork.tv. Salam and good night.